If you've seen a few of my previous videos, you very much know I love my Tuareg. I think this thing is an absolute off-road weapon. I'm tremendously happy with it, and I don't think there's another bike on the market that I'd go for over this. However, I am not going to pretend that this bike is without its issues. And I don't mean mine in particular, which has certainly had its fair share of issues, but I mean Tuaregs in general. If you've kept up with the Tuareg, you know by now that Tuareg owners are very happy with their machines, especially in the performance department. And people who are contemplating an Aprilia Tuareg as their only, next, new, whatever, first adventure bike, whatever it may be, are hesitant for this machine, seemingly due to its questionable long-term promise of reliability. I will mention one of the bigger factors in me purchasing this over another bike on the market when it came to picking up my first adventure bike, my only adventure bike, and my current only motorcycle was a 2-year unlimited mile warranty. I thought that represented good faith that Aprilia had in the reliability that this machine would offer, and I thought it meant that if I beat the crap out of it and I ran into issues, I wouldn't have to pay to fix them. With that being said, I have now had 4 warranty issues with this machine in under 5,000 miles, which is quite a lot, at least in my mind. I don't know if that's standard for an adventure bike or a bike that takes the kind of abuse this machine takes. But prior to this machine, I only had street bikes and I only had Kawasaki's, and the only things those bikes needed in my 30 or so thousand miles on the road were oil changes and new tires. This has been a different experience. I will say, for adding some context to my 5,000 miles, I have had 5,000 miles of abuse to this machine. If you've seen my riding videos, that's what I use this thing for. I don't run errands on it. I don't commute on it. I don't take it on like fun road rides. If I am on this bike, I'm heading to the trails and I'm off-roading. It's what I bought this bike for, and I'm happy to say it's what I've ended up using it for. And the videos on my channel of me off-roading this machine are the majority of my experience on it. So while the mileage is low, the quality of the miles I've had with this thing and the stress I've put it through, it's tremendous, at least in my mind. Now, the plan for this video is I am going to run through chronologically the issues I've had with this bike that are warranty issues. And the repairs I've had under warranty and the repairs I'm about to have under warranty. First up, and I don't really have much of a visual to go for with this one, but from the dealership lot when I left with this machine, things ran late and I drove off with this bike as the dealership was closing. By the time I got home, which was only a few miles away at the time, every time I depressed the rear brake pedal, I had a warning to service my motorcycle on the dash. I thought this was a fluke thing, but ride after ride after ride, that issue persisted. I ended up taking the Tuareg back to the dealership. It was in for service. They would not give the motorcycle back to me because they considered it a safety issue since it was tied to the braking system. And I was left without my new motorcycle, wondering when I'd have it back, as my very first experience with riding the Tuareg. I will say this was difficult. I felt like an idiot. I felt like I should have taken the reliability concerns people had with this machine more seriously. And I overall just felt like I made the wrong choice. At the time, my choice was between this machine and a used and slightly built up KTM 890 Adventure that I really liked, but it was something that wouldn't come with a warranty, and where both machines were questionable, I leaned towards the Tuareg and chose the Tuareg because I'd at least have warranty coverage if anything went wrong. After a few days in the shop, I called, I checked in on the bike. They didn't know what the issue was. They had tried a few different fixes. They thought they had a good idea. They kind of redid the whole rear brake situation, and to no avail. The issue is still popping up. A couple more weeks went by, checked in again, and they identified that it was the rear brake master cylinder and something to do with a sensor relating to that was not sending the right value and throwing a code every time I pressed the rear brakes. At that point, I found out that it was going to be weeks before a part came in for Italy and I'd have the bike back. I will mention this was maybe July of last year, shortly after I got the bike, and those of you who experience winter or just don't really have a very long season understand how stressful it is to not have your machine or a motorcycle to use for one of the few beautiful months of the year you get to have it. I'm now blessed with a much better climate. It's about to be November and it's 75 degrees out. It's sunny. I'm at 10,000 feet of altitude on top of a mountain and I'm sweating. It's hot. This is amazing. I think I'll be able to ride year round. So I'm in much better spirits about it now, but I also have a motorcycle to use, which is great. So week after week, I called, I checked in on my bike. I felt bad. I felt like I was harassing the service department. And then eventually I knew they had new Tuaregs there, and I called the salesperson that I worked with to purchase this motorcycle. And I said, hey man, I am still without the brand new motorcycle I bought. You know, I'm upset about it. He works there. He's a motorcycle sales guy. Seemed like an awesome dude to me. It's not his fault. It's not the service department's fault. To an extent, it's barely even, it's Aprilia's fault for sure, but it's barely their fault. It's a fluke thing. As far as I know, I'm the only person who's ever had this issue with a Tuareg. I was able to find someone in some forums who had this issue with their Aprilia RS660, which I'm assuming uses similar components and sensors, if not the exact same. But it's a very rare issue, and unfortunately, I had to experience it and deal with it. But when I called the salesman, I said, hey, I know you've got new Tuaregs. Can you please consider taking off the part I need from one of your new machines and putting it onto my bike so I can have it back? And he obliged. He walked the new motorcycle down to the service department and advised them to do it. And at that time, and this is not a lie, this is an actual coincidence, the UPS truck showed up and had my part. So it was a decent experience with the dealership. It was not a decent experience with the bike because that was my first impression with this machine. And from then I was like, can I take this thing on long trips? Can I drive across the country with it? And to be upfront, my current thoughts are no, I don't trust the bike for that, which is unfortunate, but it's not my use case. I got this machine to drive to cool places like this. Places that I can maybe take a couple hours of road maximum from home, do some off-roading on some difficult trails, and then make it to a cool spot, enjoy it, and go home. That's my use case. If I happen to break down, I can get picked up in a truck and go home. It's not a huge deal. Your use case may be different, and it may be much more important to you to have a reliable machine that you can trust a little bit more than I can trust this. But that was issue 1. Issue 2, I started noticing around 500 or 600 miles. I'm not sure when exactly. I'm gonna leave the camera there for the simplicity of this video. I've had some people in the comments complain that when I carry the camera around, it's just nausea-inducing, and just enjoy the view, and I'll talk about the bike. So there's something called, I think it's a stator plug. I'm not really a motorcycle mechanic or anything. On this side of the engine, and where that plug connects or goes into what I think is the engine case, there's been an oil leak for a long time. I noticed like sand and dirt and dust building up there. Originally, I would clean it off, it would come back. A little concerning, but wasn't a huge deal. Later on in this bike's mileage, I want to say around, by the time I had hit Schofield Pass, which is my first video on this channel, that was my first real big adventure. It was hours and hours of highway. It was very challenging off-road. The bike did go down on that ride. It was definitely one of the bike's biggest falls, or scariest at least, and that was when my kickstand bolt broke, and I'll go over that a little later in the video. But the headers come down here like a normal motorcycle. The catalytic converter is right about here. I'm hoping you can see that. And there's a lot of complaints about the heat that this bike generates. I'm used to it. It's not a huge bother for me. And I feel like it's relatively manageable, at least the way I ride, my weight, all that sort of stuff. But where the catalytic converter is, I'm not sure exactly what this piece is called. I think it's the clutch cover. There's a gasket there that seems to be just kind of disintegrating, and I think that's due to the heat, and oil was coming out of there as well. This is another thing that I noticed and I kind of just put up with for a little bit, and then I realized, hey, I have a warranty. I should at least get this on the dealership's radar. I should get this on Piaggio's radar, and go from there. I want to make sure it's on record that I'm having these issues this early into my mileage. So I did that, and it was a lot of back and forth with the dealer and the service department, and between them, Piaggio, that whole thing, and they would regularly take pictures of it, they'd clean it, tell me to drive 100 miles or so, come back and show them again, and I happily obliged, and eventually Piaggio Group asked them to do something called a powder test for those leaks, and I had to move across the state. And unfortunately, as a lot of you probably know if you are interested in this bike, the dealer network isn't that large. And where I'm living now, thankfully I'm only maybe an hour and a half from another Aprilia dealership. I think this bike is starting to get the attention that it deserves by being such an awesome machine and offering us what we want in a middleweight adventure bike, at least riders like myself. That being said, I put off taking it to that dealership. I didn't want to put a lot of street miles on my tires. I didn't want to truck the bike in, but I ran into a 4th warranty issue recently, and it was kind of what pushed me over the edge to say, hey, I've got to just take this thing in and get these warranty issues taken care of. Out of nowhere, very recently, my fuel sensor seems to have started failing. I filled the bike up, and then I noticed instead of showing full fuel, it was flashing between 4 bars, which is full on this bike, and 1 bar, which is obviously close to empty, and just 4 bars, 1 bar, 4 bar, 1 bar. And obviously something's wrong there. I had a full tank of fuel at that point in time, and that issue did go away after maybe 20 to 30 minutes of riding. and I thought it was a fluke thing, and I was hoping I could just forget about it and move on. Next fill up, it did the same thing, and then I decided to let it run down even lower to get to half a tank of fuel, a quarter tank of fuel, and the issue keeps coming back. So that being said, I called the closest dealership I had to me and scheduled some diagnostics for my warranty issues to get that stuff going. I figured saving up 3 of them seemed like enough, and I could get in touch with them and get that warranty stuff going. And I just did that earlier this week. I got that taken care of, and I had the diagnostics done, and I can run over the paperwork with you to just give you an idea of everything that's going to be replaced under warranty in the near future. And I will say, again, at this point in time, I have less than 5,000 miles on this machine. They are not road miles. I mean, of course, some of them are. They are not long highway trips. I beat this thing up, and I don't know if that's related or not. Obviously, the rear brake master cylinder issue I had, completely beyond my control, but perhaps some of the off-road abuse I've had, some of the falls this bike had, maybe that encouraged higher deterioration of the clutch cover gasket or something. I don't think it had anything to do with the stator plug. They mentioned there's like some silicone seal missing there. So I think someone screwed up, or at least the quality assurance was not there where it needed to be. But nobody seemed tremendously concerned about the amount of oil that I've lost, so that's a huge plus. So let me grab my paperwork so I can just share what is about to be done under warranty for this bike. And while it's not a Piaggio, the dealer that I went to is rather large, and because of that, they have a good process and they know exactly what they have to do and what they have to escalate to Piaggio Group to get things done. So I'm going to run through what is needed as it is listed on this paper here. So parts wise, I have clutch cover gasket, oil breather gasket, water pump gasket, 1 washer, flywheel cover gasket. Thankfully, because this is warranty, the diagnostic was free. If this was not a warranty issue with the bike and I needed to get this diagnosed at this particular dealer, the diagnostic rate is $109 per hour. So if they looked at this and determined it was not a matter of warranty, I would have been stuck paying that labor rate for diagnostics on oil leaks that I don't believe I caused. The other bit is the fuel sensor, and the part there is 1 fuel level gauge, the diagnostics of the fuel level sensor, which thankfully the issue was happening at the time they diagnosed the bike because it does come and go. And then they're planning to, of course, do the labor to remove the old one and install the new one. So a lot of stuff going on for a bike with just 5,000 miles on it. But again, it's my first adventure bike. It's the first bike I've ever beaten it out of. And yeah, I'm new to it. It's my first Italian bike for sure. Next up, I'd like to talk about a common failure point. And I've experienced this one. I know many other people have experienced this. I've seen it in other people's videos. I have a video where I encountered this. Again, I'm not going to move the camera. I am just going to talk about it. The kickstand bolt, there's a bolt off of the kickstand that the tension spring, or whatever you call it, there's a tensioner that attaches to that. It sticks out rather far and it's quite lanky. So if you ride rocky terrain and you are as unlucky as I am, you can have your front tire, which I had the stock streetish tires on at that point, kick up a rock just the right way to bang into that bolt, and that bolt will snap off. Part of it will remain screwed in. The other part will maybe, if you're lucky, remain attached to the spring that falls off. I was able to find my spring and the bolt was still attached to it. Again, that video is the first video on my channel of riding Schofield Pass, where at the deadliest part of the deadliest mountain pass in Colorado, my kickstand bolt failed and I was driving down a steep ridge with death to the right of me with my kickstand bouncing off of rocks. And at the time I was terrified that if my kickstand extended enough and then I leaned enough or hit a rock, I would be catapulted off the other side of the bike to maybe my demise. Thankfully, I fell, but in a different way. Again, first video on my channel, very boring for the most part. No commentary, 50 plus minutes of an adventure noob in jeans and ankle-free hiking boots, street tires, street PSI, off-roading Colorado's deadliest off-road mountain pass. So very stupid. Feel free to go there and make fun of the bad decisions that I've made, but I'm getting better. I'm getting more experience. I'm becoming a better rider. I'm getting more gear. I'm getting there. It's taken a bit. But again, that bolt failed and it seems like a common failure point here. And I'm hoping that either an aftermarket company makes just a generic bolt that we can plug in there, maybe out of a better material. I think that's a really good idea if someone's not doing it already. And then I think it's something for Aprilia to consider to change on a future iteration of a Tuareg, or even just upgrade it for the next model year if it's not that huge of a change. An improved bolt there would be great. Another common failure point that I've heard of, but I've not experienced myself, is when you depress like your brake lever or your shift lever, these pivot bolts in here are known to snap. And it's like the kickstand bolt, where a piece of it will be remaining in there and the bolt will snap out. People have encountered it. I've thankfully not. The bike's been down maybe 7 or 8 times on rocky terrain and I've just been lucky. But you can purchase titanium bolts and there are a couple of different companies making those, where you can make sure that those aren't going to snap, but instead your lever will just bend and you can likely bend it back and be on your way. This next one isn't much of a failure point, and I'm starting to think it's a good thing, but as I have mentioned, I've dropped this bike a lot of times, and I don't have bar protectors on here. I want them, I just don't want to spend money on them. And I've been lucky enough that they've held up. And again, I've dropped this bike on giant, chunky, rocky terrain. I have just been very lucky, and I understand that. With that being said, I'm not sure what you call this whole assembly up here that holds the handlebars, like the brackets or handlebar mount up here. But I notice after falls where there's a good impact on the handlebars, they kind of bend out of place, like those little towers that hold it are just misaligned. And originally I thought this was a permanent deformation of the bike, or I bent the bars, or I bent the fork or something like that. But you can quite easily just bring the steering to a full lock either way and bend the bars whichever direction you want. And originally this was a bother, and I thought it was, hey, this tower's weak, I wish they did something more rigid. But I'm realizing that energy is being absorbed by those bars twisting or by those mounts twisting. And I'm thinking that's a good thing at this point. If you can just easily bend it back, that energy is being absorbed by that, as opposed to potentially cracking apart or doing damage to something else. So while I originally had that as a complaint about this bike, I think it's a good thing. And outside of that, I'm personally not aware of just about anything else. I know there are heat complaints with this bike. I know some folks who got into higher mileage, especially for their second valve service, are experiencing like burnt cams. And I'm thinking that's maybe tied to the heat, maybe the catalytic converter being too restrictive, something like that. And that is something that I am concerned about, but I'm such low mileage at this point in time that I'm going to wait until my first valve service, if I even get there with this bike, and go from there. I'm hoping there aren't signs that that's being burnt, but that's another thing to look out for if you are extremely cautious about that kind of stuff with your bike. So yeah, 5,000 miles in, or not even 5,000 yet, and 4 warranty issues, 1 minor common failure point that I've experienced, and I am aware of other failure points that I've obviously shared with you here. But I will say, I don't think that's enough to turn me off from buying another Tuareg if I were in the market for a bike like this. Again, my use case doesn't require absurd reliability. It doesn't require me to be able to ride the Transamerica Trail and then take the Transamerica Trail back home without encountering any bike issues. I can put myself in a scenario where I encounter a ride-ending issue. I don't want to, I promise, but I can be in that scenario and not be too screwed over. I have bias towards appreciating this bike and not caring too much about the reliability concerns that I maybe should have with it. So what works for me and what I'm happy with may not work for you, and you may not be happy with it, but I do want to share my thoughts on this bike because I have purchased it, I have abused it, I have enjoyed it, I have loved this machine, and despite having 4 warranty issues and 5,000 miles, I'm tremendously happy with it. And if I met a clone of myself who didn't have one, I would recommend he get this bike and love it as much as the other version of me likes. One final note, I'm changing up the content on this channel. I'm now at or over 10 videos, which is pretty crazy. And I'm separating my riding videos and my talking videos. The things I enjoy doing are riding the bike and sharing it, talking about the bike and sharing it, talking about adventure riding and sharing it. And I'm going to have them all be in their own categories. I started blending riding and talking videos, and it feels a little bit clickbaity when I say, hey, watch this cool ride, and then I talk about stuff instead of riding my bike. So I'm just changing it up and making sure that if I say, hey, here's a riding video, it's a riding video. And if you want to watch me riding to the top of here, I think it's going to be a fun video. I just rode up here. That's going to be a separate video, but you could totally watch that one. It should be the video uploaded before this one. And then future videos, I'm going to have them dedicated to talking about the Tuareg specifically. There's such enthusiasm for this bike out there. And it's the reason that I think my videos have been as successful as they have. Successful by my metrics, not by a normal YouTube standard of hundreds of thousands of views or anything like that, but by the standard of me being able to share a passion like this and have it well received by people all over the world. It's very, very cool. And it's due to the enthusiasm of this machine and how happy owners of this machine are and how interested people who don't yet own a Tuareg are. And it's a very cool thing. And I want to be part of what helps this machine get the attention that it deserves. So yeah, if you've not already, definitely consider subscribing. There will be more videos talking about the Tuareg specifically, more adventure riding videos, as well as more videos of me beating the crap out of this thing, or hopefully eventually doing some more chill rides where I'm not putting myself and the bike at risk. But yeah, that's about it for this one. I am gonna chill out. I'm going to breathe. I am going to contemplate my life, and then I'm gonna just chill out and ride back down this mountain, and it is going to be excellent. Again, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy other videos on my channel. Hope you enjoy future videos on my channel. See you next time.